Did my usual morning routine this morning. Woke up, kind of potted around a little bit, made a nice cup of Yorkshire tea, opened up my podcast app, and guess what? It's been updated. iOS 12.2 has been downloaded and updated onto my phone overnight while I slept. But there's been a big change. In particular, how Apple are dealing with episode numbers in podcasts. It's a follow-on from those crazy emails that they sent a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to spend a few minutes right now demystifying that for you and explaining what that means and what this iOS 12.2 update reveals about their plans from just a few weeks ago. Okay, let's talk about podcast episode numbers. Let's talk really quickly about it. Let's demystify everything. Let's get it all out of the way. So, quick recap. A few weeks ago, Apple sent out an email. Actually, they sent 2 emails. Well, actually, they kind of sent 1.5 emails out, and then they sent another email out to kind of update people on that weird little half email that went anyway. They sent an email out scaring people a little bit, just saying, look, we don't want you to put episode numbers manually in your titles. Okay, so when you put your podcast episode out, just don't put episode numbers in there. Okay, a little bit of a pain. A lot of people had manually typed in episode 1, 2, 3 and then the title, which kind of was logical back in the day because there was no super way of organising this kind of content. So it was sort of it was logical. I understand why people did that. I did it myself. So Apple sends this email out, scare people a little bit by implying that you may get kicked from the Apple Podcast Store. What do we do? But then they sent a follow-up. The bottom line is, they're not going to kick you out. They've said that you're not going to be removed from the Apple Podcast Store, from the iTunes Store, if you've got manual episode numbers physically typed in to your podcast's title, into your episode titles, all right? That's one thing out of the way. You're not going to get kicked out. However, the best practice is something a little bit different, okay? So what Apple really were doing, and I think this is something to do with what they're going to be potentially releasing later in 2019, they've just released iOS 12.2, which brought us a slight update to the Apple Podcasts app. And in particular, that is all about organizing content a little bit easier. So what they were doing with that email is they were saying, look, please don't put episode numbers in your titles, because guess what? We're going to do it for you. Okay, we're going to make it easier to browse. We're going to make sure that you don't have to take up valuable screen real estate by typing in 4, 5, 6 characters in front of your title. We're giving you more room to actually show your title. And as Apple, we'll do the categorization. We'll put the episode numbers on there for you, all right? The bottom line is quite simple, okay? You don't need to put episode numbers in your podcast episode titles. Now, it was just odd how they went about that, okay? If they'd have said, look, we've got an update coming out, iOS 12.2, which means that we're going to display episode numbers a little bit more prominently. So if you don't mind, can you go through and just take the most recent ones out? I don't know, maybe the last 50, the last 100, whatever your feed is. Had they said that, that'd have been really clear, wouldn't it? That'd have been really obvious what was going on, but they didn't. I don't know why they didn't do that. They just did not do that, okay? I'm going to talk you through this, all right? When you fire up your podcast app, I've got my podcast here, the 7-Minute Mentor, and it comes out 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And as I scroll down here, what you'll see is that I've actually purposely left some episode numbers in some of the titles of my podcasts, okay, to show what they don't want. Now, they're not going to kick me out for this, but as I scroll back to the top, the most recent episodes, look at the difference. Number one, if I just go into an episode right here, can you see right at the top of the screen, it says the episode number, which is a lot nicer than a big number that I've manually typed in. It's pulling that from my feed, and it's actually, that's something that I've specified in my podcast host, which I'll get to in just 1 second. Now, if I jump back out of this episode, you'll see that I'm also using a trailer. So I've got the trailer tag applied to this one episode here at the top, which is under 1 minute, 52 seconds, I think. Very simple way to kind of ease people into listening to it if they've just discovered this for the first time. And then we've got the bonus episode with my good friend, Mr. Evo Terra. And this is just marked as a bonus inside my podcast host. Now, this is all easy stuff to do, but you can see what Apple are trying to do now is they're trying to categorize these things out and show people actually what type of content is this. Make it easy to define what episode you're on. And that is what they're asking for a little bit of help on, all right? Now, if I go to this next podcast, which is one of my series-based podcasts, look at how it's organized into series 1 and so on and so forth, okay? Things become really clear when you just tell Apple your intent. They're not looking to maliciously pull people out of Apple Podcasts. That's not their goal with this. What they're doing is they're just cleaning up a little bit so that this new version of the app in iOS 12.2 and potentially moving forward, whatever they release later on further down the line in 2019, has a better chance of giving you, the listener, a better experience. How do you do this? It's all done through your podcast host. So if you use a podcast host such as Captivate.fm, which is our podcast hosting solution here at Rebel Base Media, whether you integrate that with podcast websites, which is our web platform here for podcasters here at Rebel Base Media, or whether you use another podcast host, it doesn't matter. We all give you the option at an episode level to be able to specify what is this episode number. And you need to manually tell Apple what the episode number is. If you don't tell them that, which is what they've asked for you to tell them that episode number. That is the best practice. It's just a little box, and the tag that it fills in your RSS feed, the geeky stuff behind the scenes, is something called iTunes episode. So there'll be a little box in your hosting at episode level when you're publishing an episode or when you're editing one, where you can just put the episode number in. So go ahead and do that for every episode that you possibly can to make the experience better for listeners and for Apple. What you can also do is you can specify at your show level, at the podcast level, whether or not your show comes out in seasons, and then you can specify then season 1, episode 1, season 1, episode 2, and so on and so forth. Your podcast host is also going to give you the option to be able to specify, is this episode a trailer, a bonus episode, which I think Apple are going to do something with later. Maybe they're going to allow us to monetize that. Why have a bonus tag if you're not going to make it chargeable in the future for creators to be able to charge for content? Just speculating. You can choose inside your podcast host at the show level all of these options, and at the episode level you can put your episode number, your season number, and you can choose, is this episode a trailer, is it a bonus episode, or is it kind of a full episode? So we don't really have to worry too much. Apple aren't this malevolent force that are trying to make our lives more difficult. They're trying to give users the best experience. Think about it. iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, how easy are they to use? They are all about experience. And sure, the podcast app is not the best app on the market for podcasts. Who knows what they're going to do with it, okay? I believe they're just cleaning house to make the experience for listeners of podcasts a little easier and a little more joined up, okay? So don't worry. If you've got any problems, hit me up at Mr. Asquith on Twitter, or drop anything you want into the comments below. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to check us out, rebelbasemedia.io, for all of the behind the scenes of what it takes to build a podcasting company, as well as masses of podcasting education. Until next time.